The thunderous clatter of hooves echoed through the Wyoming valley as Katherine Calloway raced across the open plain, her wild auburn hair streaming behind her like a banner of defiance. The year was 1876, and while most women in Sweetwater County were busy finding husbands and settling into domestic life, Kate was busy outrunning her reputation and anyone foolish enough to challenge her to a horse race. "Catch me if you can." She shouted over her shoulder, her voice carried away by the wind as she urged her chestnut mare faster toward the horizon. Behind her, 3 local cowboys struggled to keep pace, their faces red with exertion and wounded pride. This wasn't the first time the daughter of rancher Thomas Calloway had humiliated the men of Sweetwater, and the townsfolk were beginning to whisper that it wouldn't be the last. Kate's laughter bubbled up inside her as she felt the power of her horse beneath her. This was freedom, something she valued more than the promise of marriage that seemed to preoccupy every other young woman her 22 years. She'd been riding astride since she was 5, shooting since she was 7, and breaking horses since she was 12. Her father had raised her like the son he never had, much to the dismay of the town's more traditional families. The wind whipped at her face as she pushed onward, the vast Wyoming wilderness stretching out before her. She slowed only when she reached Elk Creek, allowing her mare to drink while she waited for her defeated competitors to catch up. "Damnation, Kate," called one of the men as they finally approached. "You ride like the devil himself is chasing you." "Perhaps he is, Sam Porter," she replied with a grin, "but he'd never catch me either." The men dismounted, breathing hard. They were good men, ranch hands from neighboring properties who'd known her all her life. "Your father's looking for a wife for you, you know," said another, Tom Bailey, as he removed his hat and wiped his brow. "Heard him talking with my pa about it at the saloon last night." Kate's smile vanished. "My father knows better than to try and marry me off to some man who'll clip my wings." "No man in these parts would even try," Sam said with a laugh. "They're saying you're too wild for a husband, Kate, that any man fool enough to court you would end up with a bullet in his boot and his pride scattered across 3 counties. The other men chuckled, but Kate didn't find it amusing. She knew what they said about her in town. Wild, unladylike, unmarriageable. She'd heard the whispers since she was 16 and showed up to the county fair in trousers, winning the shooting competition against the sheriff's son. "I'll head back first," she announced, swinging back onto her mare. "Tell my father I'm checking the north pasture if he asks." Without waiting for a response, she urged her horse forward, leaving the men behind once more. She rode hard, trying to outrun the conversation, the expectations, and the growing pressure she felt from all sides. Her father had supported her unconventional ways all her life, but lately, even he had started dropping hints about settling down. At 22, she was already considered past her prime marrying age by local standards. Kate had nearly reached the northern border of her father's property when she spotted a lone rider in the distance. The stranger sat tall in his saddle, his silhouette unfamiliar against the setting sun. Curiosity piqued, she altered her course slightly to intercept him. As she drew closer, she could make out more details. The man rode a powerful black stallion, and though he was dressed like a typical cowhand denim trousers, leather chaps, cotton shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat, there was something different about him. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself, straight-backed and alert, or the gleaming Winchester rifle secured to his saddle. The stranger noticed her approach and slowed his horse to a stop, waiting for her. As Kate drew up alongside him, she was struck by his appearance. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with a face weathered by sun and wind but handsome nonetheless. His eyes were a startling blue against his tanned skin, and he regarded her with undisguised interest. "Afternoon, miss," he said, tipping his hat. "You're riding mighty fast across open country for a lady alone." Kate bristled at his comment. "This is Calloway land, and I'm Katherine Calloway. I ride how I please on my own property." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. No offense meant. just not accustomed to seeing women ride like that outside of a traveling show. And you are, she demanded, ignoring his remark. Quentin Lawson, he replied. Most folks call me Quinn. I'm heading to Sweetwater looking for work. Kate studied him. There was something in his manner that suggested he wasn't a typical drifter. His clothes, while dusty from the trail, were of good quality, and his horse was a fine specimen that had clearly been well cared for. Sweetwater's that way, she said, gesturing toward the west. You're heading east. Quinn looked momentarily confused, then chagrined. Been following a bad map, it seems. Much obliged for the correction. Kate couldn't help but feel suspicious. No experienced rider would mistake east for west, not with the sun setting clearly in the western sky. What kind of work are you looking for? She asked. Ranch work, mostly. I'm good with horses. Spent the last 3 years working cattle drives from Texas to Kansas. My father might be hiring, she said, deciding to keep an eye on this stranger. Calloway Ranch is the largest spread in these parts. You can follow the creek south until you hit the main house. Ask for Thomas Calloway. Quinn nodded. I appreciate that, Miss Calloway. Perhaps I'll see you again. Perhaps, she replied noncommittally. Good day, Mr. Lawson. She clicked her tongue and urged her mare forward, continuing north. She could feel his eyes on her back as she rode away, but resisted the urge to turn around. Something about Quentin Lawson didn't sit right with her, and Katherine Calloway had learned to trust her instincts. The next morning, Kate was surprised to find Quinn Lawson sitting at her father's breakfast table. He'd cleaned up since their encounter the previous day, his dark hair neatly combed and his face freshly shaven, revealing a strong jaw and the hint of a dimple in his right cheek. Katherine, her father said as she entered, you've met our new ranch hand, I believe? Briefly, she replied, taking a seat across from Quinn. Yesterday on the north pasture. Her father, Thomas Calloway, was a bear of a man with graying hair and a perpetual sunburn. He'd built his ranch from nothing after coming west as a young man, and now at 52, he commanded respect throughout the territory. Quinn here has experience with horse breaking, Thomas continued. I've put him in charge of those new Mustangs we brought in last week. Kate's eyebrows shot up. Those were supposed to be my project. Her father gave her a stern look. You've got enough on your plate helping Maria with the accounts and checking the fence lines. Kate felt her temper rising. Breaking the wild Mustangs was the task she'd been looking forward to for weeks. Having it handed to this stranger felt like a betrayal. I've been breaking horses since I was 12, she argued. Why bring in someone new for a job I can do perfectly well? Quinn cleared his throat. If I might suggest, Mr. Calloway, perhaps your daughter could assist me. 2 sets of hands are better than one with a wild bunch like those Mustangs. Thomas considered this for a moment, then nodded. That's not a bad idea. What do you say, Kate? She wanted to refuse out of spite, but her desire to work with the Mustangs won out. Fine, she conceded, but I lead, he assists. Quinn's lips twitched with amusement, but he nodded in agreement. As you say, Miss Calloway. After breakfast, Kate changed into her work clothes and met Quinn at the corral where the Mustangs had been penned. There were 6 of them, beautiful wild creatures from the high country, their coats gleaming in the morning sun. I've been watching them, Quinn said as she approached. The black one with the star on his forehead is the leader. He's the key to the others. Kate nodded, having already come to the same conclusion. I'll take him first. You can start with the sorrel mare, she seems the calmest. They worked in silence for a while, each approaching their chosen horses with ropes and gentle words. Kate was surprised to find that Quinn was indeed skilled with horses. He moved with confidence but without aggression, letting the sorrel mare come to him rather than forcing an interaction. Where did you learn to break horses? She asked finally, curiosity getting the better of her. My father was a horse trader in Texas, Quinn replied, not looking away from the mare. I grew up around wild horses. My father taught me, Kate said. My mother died when I was young and he raised me to be independent. Quinn nodded. That explains a lot. What's that supposed to mean? she challenged. He finally looked at her, those blue eyes direct and unafraid. Just that you don't act like most women I've met. It's not a criticism, Miss Calloway. Kate wasn't sure how to take his comment, so she returned her attention to the black stallion who was watching her with wary eyes. The folks in town think I'm too wild, she said after a moment, unsure why she was sharing this with a virtual stranger. They say no man will ever want to marry me because I can't behave like a proper lady. Quinn chuckled. And is that what you want, to be a proper lady with a husband to order you about? No, she admitted. But sometimes I wonder if there's something wrong with me for not wanting what every other woman seems to desire. Nothing wrong with charting your own course, Quinn said, moving slowly closer to the sorrel. The world would be a dull place if we all wanted the same things. They worked together for the rest of the morning, and by lunchtime, both had made progress with their respective horses. Kate found herself reluctantly admitting that Quinn was a good partner. He respected her leadership, but offered suggestions when he saw an opportunity for improvement. Over the next several weeks, they fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings were dedicated to the Mustangs, afternoons to other ranch work. Despite her initial reservations, Kate found herself enjoying Quinn's company. He treated her as an equal, never questioning her abilities or suggesting she should be more ladylike. One evening, as they finished putting the horses away for the night, Quinn asked, "Would you consider showing me more of the ranch tomorrow? I've only seen the parts we work on daily." Kate considered his request. "I suppose I could. There's a place up in the foothills I think you'd appreciate, good grazing land with a view of the whole valley." The next day, they rode out early, taking a picnic lunch prepared by Maria, the ranch's cook. Kate led the way, guiding Quinn through meadows bursting with wildflowers and across bubbling streams fed by mountain snowmelt. "This country is something else," Quinn said as they climbed higher into the foothills. "Different from Texas, more dramatic." "Do you miss it, Texas?" Kate asked. Quinn was quiet for a moment. "Parts of it. The smell of mesquite after rain, the way the stars seem to hang lower in the sky, but there are things I don't miss too." "Like what?" He hesitated. "Complications, family expectations, the past." Kate sensed there was more to his story than he was sharing, but she didn't press. Everyone who came west had reasons for leaving something behind. They reached Kate's favorite spot just before noon, a grassy plateau overlooking the Calloway Ranch and the surrounding valley. The mountains rose majestically in the distance, still capped with snow even in early summer. "It's beautiful," Quinn said, dismounting and helping Kate spread the blanket for their picnic. They ate in companionable silence for a while, enjoying the view and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of pine and sage. "Can I ask you something personal?" Quinn said finally. Kate nodded, curious. "Why do you care what the town thinks of you? You seem happy with your life, your father supports you, and you're clearly good at what you do. So why does it bother you when they say you're too wild for a husband?" Kate picked at a blade of grass, considering his question. "I suppose because sometimes I wonder if they're right. Not that I need a husband, but that maybe there is something wrong with me for not fitting into the mold everyone expects." "There's nothing wrong with you, Kate," Quinn said softly, using her first name for the first time. "You're just brave enough to live the life you want instead of the one others think you should have." She looked up, surprised by the earnestness in his voice and the use of her given name. "You don't think I'm too wild?" Quinn smiled, and something in Kate's chest tightened at the warmth in his eyes. "I think you're exactly who you're meant to be." Their eyes held for a long moment, and Kate felt a strange flutter in her stomach. She quickly looked away, suddenly conscious of how alone they were and how close he sat beside her. "We should head back," she said, standing abruptly. "There's a storm coming in from the mountains." Quinn looked up at the sky, which remained perfectly clear, but he didn't contradict her. "Whatever you say, Miss Calloway." The ride back was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts. Kate was confused by her reaction to Quinn. She'd never been one to get flustered around men, quite the opposite, in fact. But something about Quinn Lawson's steady gaze and quiet confidence affected her in ways she didn't understand. As the days turned into weeks, Kate found herself looking forward to her time with Quinn. They continued working with the Mustangs, which were coming along nicely under their combined efforts. The black stallion had finally accepted a saddle, though he still wouldn't take a bit, and the sorrel mare was now gentle enough for Quinn to ride around the corral. Kate noticed subtle changes in her own behavior. She found herself taking more care with her appearance in the mornings, though she still refused to wear dresses for ranch work. She caught herself watching Quinn when he wasn't looking, admiring the way his shoulders moved as he worked or the gentleness of his hands as he tended to the horses. One afternoon, they rode into town together to pick up supplies. Kate braced herself for the usual whispers and stares, but was surprised when Quinn offered her his arm as they walked down the main street. "What are you doing?" she asked, eyeing his extended arm with suspicion. "Being a gentleman," he replied with a small smile. "Humor me." Hesitantly, she placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, feeling oddly formal and feminine despite her practical riding clothes. They walked into the general store together, and Kate couldn't help but notice the surprised looks on the faces of the townspeople. Mrs. Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife and one of the town's most notorious gossips, approached them with undisguised curiosity. "Katherine Calloway, I haven't seen you in town for an age, and who might this be?" "Quentin Lawson, madam," Quinn said before Kate could answer, tipping his hat politely. "I work for Mr. Calloway." "How lovely," Mrs. Peterson said, her eyes darting between them speculatively. "And are you finding our little town to your liking, Mr. Lawson?" "Very much so," he replied. "Especially the company." He glanced at Kate with such warmth that she felt her cheeks growing hot. Mrs. Peterson noticed too, her eyebrows rising nearly to her hairline. "Well, I must say, it's nice to see young Katherine with a gentleman friend," Mrs. Peterson said with a meaningful look. "Perhaps you'll both attend the summer social next weekend. The whole town will be there." Kate was about to refuse when Quinn spoke again. "We'd be delighted, wouldn't we, Miss Calloway?" Put on the spot, Kate could only nod, though the idea of attending a social function filled her with dread. She'd avoided such gatherings for years, uncomfortable with the expectations they placed on her to act like a proper lady. As they left the store with their supplies, Kate rounded on Quinn. "Why did you agree to that? I hate those socials." Quinn looked genuinely surprised. "I thought you might enjoy an evening of music and dancing. We don't have to go if you really don't want to." Kate sighed, feeling guilty for her outburst. "No, it's fine, I don't exactly fit in at those events. I don't have the right clothes, I don't know the right dances, and everyone stares at me like I'm some kind of curiosity." Quinn studied her face for a moment. "Would it help if I promised not to leave your side all evening? We can face the curious stares together." Something about his offer touched her. No one had ever offered to stand with her against the town's judgment before. "All right," she agreed reluctantly. "But don't expect me to wear a fancy dress with a corset. I'd rather face a rattlesnake." Quinn laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Wear whatever makes you comfortable, Kate. I'll be proud to escort you no matter what you have on." The week leading up to the social was busy with ranch work, but Kate found her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the upcoming event. Despite her declaration to Quinn, she secretly visited her wardrobe, examining the few dresses she owned for something suitable. The night of the social arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Kate stood in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She'd settled on a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. It wasn't fancy by town standards, but it was clean and well made. She'd left her hair down, the auburn waves falling past her shoulders instead of being tucked under a hat as usual. When she descended the stairs, her father looked up in surprise. "Well, don't you look pretty, Katherine? I can't remember the last time I saw you in a dress." She smoothed the fabric self-consciously. "Is it all right, not too plain?" "It's perfect," came Quinn's voice from the doorway. He stood there in his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed. a look of appreciation in his eyes that made Kate's heart skip. The ride to town was quiet, Kate growing increasingly nervous as they approached the brightly lit town hall where the social was being held. Music and laughter spilled from the open doors and couples were already dancing inside. Quinn helped her down from her horse, offering his arm once more. "Remember, I promised not to leave your side." She took a deep breath and placed her hand on his arm. "Let's get this over with." As they entered, several heads turned in their direction. Kate felt the familiar weight of scrutiny, but Quinn's steady presence beside her helped her stand taller. They moved through the crowd, Quinn greeting people politely while keeping Kate close. "Would you like to dance?" he asked as the band struck up a lively tune. "I'm not very good," she admitted. Quinn smiled. "Neither am I. We can be terrible together." Despite her reservations, Kate found herself enjoying the evening. Quinn was true to his word, staying by her side throughout the night. He was attentive without being possessive, respectful without being distant. When they danced, he held her just firmly enough to guide her through the steps without making her feel controlled. "Everyone's staring at us," Kate whispered during a slower dance. "Let them," Quinn replied. "Maybe they're just noticing what I've known since I met you, that you're the most remarkable woman in the territory." Kate looked up, searching his face for signs that he was teasing, but found only sincerity. "You don't have to say things like that." "I know," he said simply. "I say it because it's true." As the night wore on, Kate noticed a change in the way people were looking at her. The usual judgment and disapproval seemed to have been replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, something that looked almost like respect. Several women who had previously avoided her actually approached to make conversation, and even Mrs. Peterson complimented her dress. "You've made quite an impression," Quinn observed as they stepped outside for some air. The night was beautiful, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. From the town hall, they could hear the music continuing, but out here it was peaceful. "I think you're the one who made the impression," Kate replied. "They're all wondering what kind of man would court the wild Calloway girl." Quinn's eyebrows rose. "Is that what I'm doing, courting you?" Kate felt her cheeks grow warm. "I didn't mean to presume." "No," Quinn interrupted gently, taking her hand. "I just wanted to be sure you knew." "Because I am courting you, Katherine Calloway, if you'll allow it." Kate's heart pounded in her chest. "Why?" she asked, genuinely confused. "You could have any girl in town. They're all properly domesticated, unlike me." Quinn smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Maybe I don't want properly domesticated. Maybe I want someone who races horses and breaks mustangs and speaks her mind." "People will talk," she warned him. "Let them," he said again, and then, very slowly, he leaned down and kissed her. It was Kate's first kiss, sweet and gentle and over too quickly. When Quinn pulled back, his eyes searched hers for a reaction. "Was that all right?" he asked, suddenly less confident. In response, Kate reached up and pulled him down for another kiss, longer this time and less hesitant. When they finally parted, she was smiling. "I think," she said softly, "that I might be willing to be courted after all, Mr. Lawson, but don't expect me to change who I am." "I wouldn't dream of it," he promised. The following months were the happiest of Kate's life. Quinn continued to work at the ranch, proving himself invaluable to her father. Their courtship progressed steadily, with rides across the countryside, picnics in secret meadows, and quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset. Quinn never tried to change Kate or tame her wild spirit. Instead, he seemed to delight in her independence, encouraging her to race him across open fields and never complaining when she beat him. They worked together breaking the mustangs, and by late summer, all 6 horses were gentled and ready for use on the ranch. Kate found herself falling deeply in love with Quinn, not despite his acceptance of her unconventional ways, but because of it. He was the first person outside her father who seemed to value her exactly as she was. One evening in early autumn, they rode to their special spot in the foothills. The aspens were turning golden, and the air had a crisp edge that hinted at the coming winter. Quinn spread a blanket on the ground, and they sat together watching the valley below, where the ranch buildings looked like toys in the distance. "I need to tell you something," Quinn said after a comfortable silence. Something in his tone made Kate look at him sharply. "What is it?" Quinn took a deep breath. "I haven't been entirely truthful about my past." Kate's heart sank. She'd known there was something he wasn't telling her, but part of her had hoped it wouldn't matter. "My father wasn't just a horse trader," Quinn continued. "He was a horse thief. He ran a gang that stole horses from ranches in Texas and sold them across the border in Mexico." Kate remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I didn't know what he was doing until I was 16. By then, I was already involved, helping train the horses before they were sold. When I found out they were stolen, I wanted no part of it, but my father." Quinn's voice hardened. "He wasn't a man who took kindly to disobedience." "What happened?" Kate asked softly. "I stayed for another 5 years trying to convince myself I could change things from the inside. Then one night a rancher caught us on his property. There was a fight. My father shot him." Kate gasped. "The rancher lived," Quinn assured her quickly, "but that was the last straw for me. I left that night, rode north, and never looked back. I've been trying to make an honest living ever since, working cattle drives, breaking horses legitimately." "Is that why you came here? You were running?" Quinn nodded. "Partly. I heard about a big ranch looking for experienced hands, so I headed for Sweetwater. But I wasn't just running from my past, Kate. I was looking for a future, somewhere I could be proud of the work I did." Kate absorbed his confession, trying to reconcile this new information with the man she'd come to love. "Are you still in danger?" she asked finally. "Could your father find you?" Quinn shook his head. "I got word 3 months ago that he was killed in a shootout with the Texas Rangers. That's why I felt I could finally tell you the truth. My past can't hurt us anymore." Kate reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. "Thank you for telling me." "You're not angry?" he asked, surprised by her calm reaction. "You were young, Quinn. And you made the right choice in the end, walking away from that life." She squeezed his hand. "We all have pasts. What matters is who we choose to be now." Relief flooded Quinn's face. "There's something else I wanted to ask you, Kate. Something I've been carrying around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Kate's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate silver ring with a small blue stone that matched her eyes. "Katherine Calloway," Quinn said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not because you need a husband or because the town expects it, but because I love you exactly as you are, wild spirit and all, and I want to spend my life riding beside you." Tears filled Kate's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." Quinn slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally broke apart, Kate was laughing through her tears. "I never thought I'd say yes to a proposal," she admitted. "I always thought marriage would mean giving up my freedom." Quinn brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Not with me, it won't. I don't want to tame you, Kate. I just want to be wild with you." They returned to the ranch hand in hand, sharing their news with her father, who welcomed Quinn with a bare hug and misty eyes. The news spread quickly through the town, causing a sensation. Katherine Calloway, the girl too wild for a husband, was getting married. The wedding took place the following spring, when the wildflowers carpeted the meadows and the air was sweet with promise. Kate wore a simple white dress, but insisted on riding her chestnut mare to the church rather than arriving in a wagon. Quinn waited for her at the altar, his blue eyes shining with love as she walked down the aisle. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, curiosity overcoming their previous judgments. As Kate and Quinn exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for all their days, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. "I think they're finally starting to understand," Quinn whispered as they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. "Understand what?" Kate asked. "That being wild isn't something to be tamed, it's something to be treasured." Outside the church, They mounted their horses, Kate on her faithful chestnut mare, Quinn on his black stallion, and rode through town together, side by side, equals in life and love. As they reached the open country beyond Sweetwater, Kate turned to her new husband with a mischievous smile. "Race you home," Quinn laughed, the sound carrying on the spring breeze. "You're on, Mrs. Lawson." They galloped across the Wyoming wilderness, two wild hearts beating as one, racing toward their future together. And as the townsfolk watched them go, even Mrs. Peterson had to admit that perhaps Katherine Calloway hadn't been too wild for a husband. After all, she'd simply been waiting for a man wild enough to ride beside her. 5 years later, the Lawson Ranch stood as one of the most successful horse breeding operations in the territory. Kate and Quinn had built it together on land adjacent to her father's property, combining their skills and passion for horses into a thriving business. Their home was filled with laughter, especially since the arrival of their 3-year-old daughter, Emma, who already showed signs of inheriting her mother's spirit and her father's gentle way with horses. On a beautiful autumn day, much like the one when Quinn had proposed, they rode together to their special spot in the foothills. Emma sat in front of Quinn on his saddle, giggling as they climbed higher into the golden aspens. When they reached the plateau, Quinn helped his wife and daughter down, spreading a blanket for them just as he had done years before. "Do you ever regret it?" Kate asked as they watched Emma chase butterflies through the grass. "Marrying the wild Calloway girl." Quinn smiled, the same smile that had first won her heart. "Not for a single moment," he said, pulling her close. "Some spirits aren't meant to be tamed, Kate. They're meant to be loved just as they are." Kate rested her head on his shoulder, watching their daughter race across the meadow with the same fearless joy that had once made the town whisper that she was too wild for a husband. Now those same townspeople pointed to the Lawsons as an example of true partnership, of love that elevated rather than constrained. "Race you back to the ranch," Kate suggested, her eyes twinkling with the same mischief that had first caught Quinn's attention. "You're on," he agreed, scooping up their daughter. "But this time I think Emma and I might just beat you," Kate laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. "We'll see about that, Cowboy." As they mounted their horses and headed down the hill, Kate felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. She was still wild, still free, still herself, but now she shared that freedom with a man who rode beside her, matching her pace stride for stride, and a daughter who would grow up knowing that being wild wasn't something to overcome, but something to celebrate. And as they raced across the Wyoming wilderness, 3 hearts beating in rhythm with their galloping horses, Kate knew that she had found something far more precious than the approval of others. She had found love that didn't seek to change her, but instead changed alongside her, as wild and free as the land they called home.